When I was first at Milperra, I was Sr Jude, and because it was the 1960s, I was called Hey Jude. Fortunately, I liked the song because it was played at me and with me and sung to me, so to this day a lot of the students of that era still call me Hey Jude. But I was a secondary teacher for quite all those years. I was a science and maths coordinator. I was also a religion coordinator at one stage. I was there in 2 stages. I went there when the first class was there for its 4th and 5th year. So I had them for their maths and science in 4th and 5th year. And then I went to uni, 65, 66, 67, I went and did my science degree. Then I came back and picked up again 68, 69, 70. And I actually, in 68, 69 is when I had the class at the present Governor's Inn and quite a few of that group. Okay. And we moved from Milperra then to Bankstown in 71. Okay. So I think I got it right. Brilliant. Probably 2 I would like to mention. You have to realise the building was going on around us. Like initially, for example, the convent was built in stages. So the first year the sisters were at Central Bankstown. Second year I was actually teaching at Penania in that 2nd and 3rd year, and they were staying with us in 2nd year at Penania. And then 3rd year they went to the convent. So the convent was there in 3rd year because they'd finished the first building, which was the 1st, 2nd and 3rd year classrooms. And then they were trying to do the 4th and 5th year classrooms, which had the science underneath. But they didn't finish it in time for the beginning of 4th year. So I went out for the beginning of 4th year. We didn't have our classrooms. We didn't have our science rooms ready for the year to begin. And life was very complex. I was also one of the 2nd year classroom teachers. Their part was finished, so I had a classroom up there. But when I came down to teach 4th year maths, 5th years didn't exist that year, it was only 4th year. We had the use of what was to be the staff room, a library and also a staff room, and so it had all these shelves in it which had been pushed to the side, and we had no blackboard, and they hung the back of plastic maps over shelves to work as a blackboard. And I had to write with those pencil pen type things on the back of maps, doing big algebraic sort of writings. And very often they managed to fall off and right on my head. And it was in the beginning of that year, of course, I was in a white habit, and the coloured pen stuff, and the kids were great. They were trying to save me every time. They'd dive from their seats to pick it off before it hit me. And it was that lovely sense that we were always together trying to do things and manage. And there was a lot of managing. And that, I suppose, is what I'm trying to speak about. They knew, and they were managing, and they were in this very uncomfortable setup, and they weren't complaining. I was also trying to teach in an uncomfortable setup. So much so when we were trying to do our chemistry, we could only had metho burners. You couldn't use them in the classroom. And we had two of them that we went out on the steps, and on the ledge of the steps was where we were holding on some sort of wooden thing, these metho burners, but of course the wind at times was blowing. And then they were trying to get their results. And in those days, your leaving chemistry prac was in one book, had to be ready to be checked by the supervisor, some sort of person who came out for, I can't remember the details, but it was looked at before the final leaving certificate. And so from the beginning of fourth year, all the experiments had to be up to the mark. And so I had to get them to put their actual results on paper first, so that I could work out what we could do to get the results down to realistic amounts. It wasn't their fault. They just couldn't manage all this deviations, and I had to be pretty clever with my own head to get it. But it was like, everything was like that. You're managing, and we're trying to help them understand what was happening, and they were doing not a complaint. They could have been really complaining all the time. And I was having to fill in all sorts of ways, and there was no one, and of course it was hard for the principal to understand the difficulties I was coping with, because no one else understood chemistry, and no one else understood the fact I had maths 1 and 2 and general maths, so I had the differences in the group. I had to teach it all at once, of course. And so that was the beginning, and it was just so wonderful. It was for the end of first term we got into the building. That was great. And that was the first operetta that year when we had the hall. But what we hadn't realised, it was a very wide hall, and none of the backdrops that we'd used to previous years, they'd gone out to a hall and everything fitted. And that year nothing fitted. So there we were with the men from after school to about 8 o'clock at night, cutting it all up. Again, the parents were wonderful. They were the same as the kids. They knew we didn't have anything to fit. They knew what the kids were doing. The art class was painting up backdrops and we cut it up. I was working with the men, measuring, cutting, and then getting beer and food for them. And it was just such a relationship. From working together, we all owned it. Kids, staff, and students. And to me that was Milperra, a place we all owned and we all worked together in.
Beautiful, thank you.
But it was the core spirit of the place. This school was ours. This school was one in which we all owned it. We all cared about each other, parents and students, and girls had come there from all different schools. Some of the girls had come through those first 3 years, but 2/3 of a year, the fourth years, had come in fresh from other schools, and they quickly merged into this, what must have been a madhouse for them. And we all became one.
Wow, well, it sounds like family.
It was very much a community, and very quickly I got to know the girls, what the girls were good at, what they've had difficulty with, and I was trying to help them all to have confidence in themselves, and we were trying to help them believe in themselves, that young women were of value and that they had a right to look at the world and what they could do for the world.
Beautiful.
And they trusted us because they knew that we'd gone out of our way to help them through those stages when they couldn't sort out what was happening. I'd sit there for whatever time it took to help them get there.
Yeah, thank you.
That Milperra will continue to be a place where young women believe in themselves, have a sense of community, a great hope in each other, and a sense of relationship with their teachers, and believe that they can trust their teachers and can see the world, can see the needs of the world they're in, and look and see ways that even while they're at school, they can bring about change, that they can work with people who need help, that they can learn to be trusted by these people, and they can change their society, and they can be trusted, and the world can change, and that everyone, with the support of each other, can grow, and life can be good, and they can grow in their own family and help their family. Because there were times I remember one of the parents saying about his daughter, oh, she's not very good, doesn't work. She wasn't the most brilliant student. I said, she works extremely hard. I said, look, I trust, her name was Selita, I said, I trust her so much, she's such a good student. You should be so proud of her. And she grew 10 feet tall as I spoke and told her father just how much I thought of her. And look, for the rest of that time at that school, she'd only been there in year 11, she just changed because a teacher had spoken up for her in front of her father. And apparently at other schools, the teachers had given in to the father. I wasn't giving in, she was good.
Not at MSJ.
No, an MSJ student had to be stood up for.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah.
And the father was quite amazed.
Cool.
And to me, that is what MSJ is about. It's about loving each other, trusting, and allowing students of all shapes and sizes. I still remember I had a student at Penania, and she came up with me to Milperra, and she was a dwarf with a very large lump on her back, and she had a short lifespan, she knew that. And Helen was the most beautiful young woman. And I used to take great delight in finding ways to give her devices to say to her, will you help me turn the rope when we're at the primary school, and will you help me take scores for the basketball. I made her very important in everything. And all the others were so respectful of it. They realised that what I was doing, and they would have liked to have had some of those roles, but they never, ever took them away from Helen, because they were the only roles she could take.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And they went out their way to make sure she had special roles too, when I wasn't around. And to me, that was what the school should be doing, accepting us all, the big and the small, and everything. And that's my hope, that whatever it is, it will stand out. I can remember when the present governor was made judge in the federal court. At the same time, one of the one of the sons of Gough Whitlam was made the judge. Here he was, he'd gone to special schools, and his grandparents and his parents had all these things, and he was Margaret, whose father was a milkman, and she'd held out, and she'd gone to Milperra. And people saying, where's Milperra? What's Mount St Joseph? What's that? And I said, oh, it's a wonderful school where people trust each other. One of the wonderful things that was a privilege for us at Milperra was that the senior students and ourselves went away together, and the parents at different times. We shared our faith together. We shared our doubts together. It was the time of the Vietnamese War. As the boys from the local schools, some were going, some weren't, and the girls were hearing their pain. So we shared together our pains, our hopes. We shared together what we believed in and what we doubted, and trusted each other that would be held in a sacred way. And I hope that continues, that staff and students try to grow in faith and hope, and that comes out of love.
Beautiful.
In Domini Arma Lucis, put on the armour of light and imagine. MSJ girls can do anything.